All right, all right, all right. What is up, everybody? What's happening? First of all, I need to apologize to you guys for last night. That was an absolute disaster, and now I hope you guys can understand why I've been missing so many shows because that tiredness that I felt yesterday. I lay down at about 8:30 and I said I'm going to sleep for an hour. I'm gonna get up at 9:30, upload my slides, do my sound check, get the show ready to go at 10:30. I freaking laid down at 8:30 and got up at like 11:17 or 11:20. It was crazy. And I was still tired. That's the crazy thing. So I jumped up, I checked the stream. I see everybody there waiting on me, a couple of donations that came in, and I'm like, ah, dang it. Well, I figured since I missed that show last night, I might as well just go ahead and crank it up tonight instead of making you guys wait any longer because you've been waiting long enough. You've been waiting long enough, and it's about time that we discuss this topic because I know you guys really enjoy the topics that I discuss, and you learn a lot and it's interesting stuff. It's interesting to me too. That's why I choose to talk about it. But we've known for a long time that Israel had their hands in Central America and South America in terms of the, for lack of a better term, black market. We know that Nicolas Maduro claimed to be, I believe, a Sephardic small hat. And Claudia Scheinbaum, the now president of Mexico, is a small hat as well. What type, what tribe, I don't know. All I know is Scheinbaum is a small hat name and she is a small hat. And believe it or not, these people, these small hats, they're all over the world. And they're very, very, very deeply entrenched in South and Central America. Remember that news story about the rabbis? I believe it was in Costa Rica, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm remembering correctly. It was Costa Rica, and they were running a child trafficking ring. You guys remember hearing about that? That was like either late 2024 or early 2025. It was a while ago, but I remember it. I don't know if you guys remember it, but I remember it. And I've recently discovered that not only were they involved in the child trafficking and the human trafficking, but they're also involved with the cartels, mainly arming the cartels, selling them weapons. Not only that, they also were involved in training these cartel members in, combat tactics, like how to use those weapons. So it seems as if when Donald Trump was going after the human trafficking and the child traffickers and all that stuff, and then he jumped over to, Maduro and the cartels and all that. Again, from the surface level, it appeared as if he was just all over the place. He was just trying to solve every problem in the world. But when you look at all these aspects, all these issues, especially the human trafficking and the drug trafficking, as separate as they may seem, they're one and the same because the drug traffickers tend to use the same routes as the human traffickers and vice versa. And now you see Trump, working with Iran. They say it's a war with Iran. He's working with Iran to dismantle Israel's spy networks over in Iran in and around the Middle East. And now our Pentagon just raised Israel's spying, the threat of Israel spying on the U.S. to the highest level. So now they're shining the spotlight on not only the fact that our our country is heavily infiltrated with Israeli spies, but they're raising the threat level, which means that they're going to be going after these people. And when you look at this recent discovery of Israel's involvement with the drug cartels, then it all starts to make sense. Why would Trump go after the human and child traffickers, then the drug traffickers, then the Israeli spy network? Because the spy network is what's controlling and operating these other entities. They are heavily involved. So when Trump was going after the cartels, he was cutting off their money. When he was going after the human traffickers, he was not only rescuing the victims, but cutting off the money. And now that the money has been significantly cut off and they can't organize as well, then you launch the kinetic strikes and start taking out their targets within Iran. And the reason why Iran has to be the target is because the Zionist control media here in the United States has been pumping our heads full of propaganda, telling us that Iran is planning terrorist attacks and Iran is going to strike us on U.S. soil and all this crap, when in reality, it's actually Israel who's planning to strike Americans on American soil. It ain't Iran, but they're saying it's Iran because Israel would have used their spy network in Iran to coordinate those attacks here at home. So in other words, they would use their Iranian spy network or their Iran spy network to false flag us. But if the spy network in Iran is dismantled and the orders can't be relayed via, Iran, like pass the message from Israel to Iran, and then from the operatives in Iran, then transmit those communications to the operatives here at home. If they don't have their network functional in Iran, they can't do that, which means if they want to coordinate a massive attack here at home in the United States, they would have to give the order directly, which will open the door to them being exposed as the ones behind the terrorist attack. In other words, it would make it practically impossible for them to launch an attack against the United States domestically and blame Iran. So it's actually quite brilliant what Trump is doing. And now that we're seeing the Pentagon raise the threat level of Israeli spies in the U.S., that's huge because I don't think that's ever happened. I don't think any other president has ever even mentioned the fact that there's an Israeli spy network operating in the United States, even though there is, and we've always known it. So just the mere fact that the Pentagon is raising the threat level lets you know they're now willing to shine a light on it. They're now willing to go public and make it known. Disclose it to the public and make it known, which means there's a very, very high probability that they are going to start going after these people. So this is big shit. And now when you look at Israel's connection to the cartels, as I have here on the thumbnail, the cartel connection, it all makes perfect sense now. That's why Trump took out Maduro. That's why Trump was going after the Mexican drug cartels. He wanted to go after the Mexican drug cartels, but the only way he could do so successfully is if he cut off their supply line. And who was one of their biggest suppliers? Or at least a transit point for their biggest suppliers? Venezuela. Under Maduro, he was using the Venezuelan military to move the dope. So You take Venezuela out of the equation, that removes one of their biggest transit points. Now what happens? The cocaine producers in Colombia and those other countries that are moving their dope through Venezuela, guess what happens? They now end up with overstock. And when they end up with overstock, they sell it cheaper and they want to move more and move it faster because they got to clear their warehouses. They got to clear their inventory space, or their operation shuts down. So with this overstock, now you have more locations that are active with drugs present on the scene. So if the FBI or the DEA or whoever goes down there to do investigations and make major busts, guess what? The chances of them catching people is much greater now because the dope ain't moving as smoothly through the system as it was before. It's backing up. And when it's backing up, it's got to be stashed. And when it's stashed and it's present, it's there for the taking. It's there for the government to discover it and arrest who needs to be arrested. So it's quite brilliant. But by cutting off the supply line of dope to the Mexican drug cartels, that cut off their money stream, their cash flow. And it couldn't have come at a worse time because the cartels are not only at war with our government and the Mexican government, but they're at war with each other as well. And as we all know, you need money to fight a war. But they don't have the money because they don't have the supply line anymore. So on one hand, you got the Israeli spy network being disrupted in the Middle East, and now it's going to be disrupted here in the United States. You got the dope supply lines being disrupted between South America and Mexico. And the entire system is being unraveled in order to further destabilize and neutralize Israel. Trump just signed the executive order, not the executive order. Congress just passed the NDAA for 2027. I'm not sure if Trump signed it yet or not, but it integrates the Israeli military into our Pentagon, which puts Israel's military under the direct control of the President of the United States, not vice versa. Not like it has been where the President of the United States was under Israel's control. So Trump basically bogarted the power and took control of the entire system. And now he's getting rid of the deep state operatives. But what we're going to talk about tonight is mainly Israel's connection to the cartel. How are they connected to the cartels? What's their involvement? And how detrimental would it be to Israel if the cartels were taken down? So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's not waste any more time. Make sure you guys go follow me over on Rumble if you haven't followed me on Rumble yet. Also, if you'd like to donate to the show, you can do so via Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo by using the tag scrolling across the screen in the banner below. The links that are pinned to the bottom of the YouTube chat. In the gray box where it says Citizen Man TV in yellow, just click the yellow. The box opens up and all the links are there. And I want to give a big shout out to my brother Shane M for the Venmo on that he hit me with last night for this show that we're doing now. So shout out to you, Shane. Shout out to my brother Lee14224 for that faithful support on the PayPal. And for the show prior to this, I want to give a big shout out to my man Kevin, my brother Kevin. Kevin hit me on the PayPal. I believe it was when the show was ending or right after the show ended, so I didn't get to shout him out during the show. So Kevin, if you're watching, I'm shouting you out now, bro. Appreciate that support. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get rolling. So, the latest. Pentagon raised threat of Israeli spying on U.S. to highest level, sources say. The counterintelligence threat level was raised by the Defense Intelligence Agency in recent weeks after growing concerns that Israeli espionage had become more aggressive than usual, sources say. Now, this is important to note, the fact that Israeli their espionage, their spying has become more aggressive. Why do you think that is? Well, I'll tell you why that is. It's become more aggressive because in this war with Iran, Trump is undermining Israel. The Israelis themselves have complained that they can't control Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's basically running the show. And so they have to step up their espionage here in the United States because they got to find a way to blackmail Donald Trump and gain control of his presidency somehow, some way, because they're being undermined. That's why they're becoming so much more aggressive. Because here's the thing. And I had a brother leave me a comment on my community tab, and he said something about Trump is compromised, his game over, the typical wokey doke shit. And I'm doing these live streams and I'm showing you guys all these facts that seem to contradict that idea that Israel owns Trump. And for some reason, people still hold on to this shit. It's like the globe earth flat earth thing. It's like no matter how many facts you show these people, they're just going to go back to their religious belief and what they've been taught to believe. No matter what, even if it means they have to engage in intellectual dishonesty and disregard actual facts that would undoubtedly change their opinions. They don't want to change their opinions, so they don't want to see the facts, or they don't want to acknowledge the facts. Because if Trump really was compromised and controlled, like all the wokey dokes want to say, there would be no reason for Israel's espionage to become more aggressive. They weren't aggressive when Obama was in office. They weren't aggressive when Bush was in office. You know why? Because they were playing ball. But they become aggressive when there's a president in office who's not playing ball. You know when's the last time Israeli espionage became this aggressive in the U.S.? It was right before they took out JFK. You know why? Because JFK was planning to undermine them too. So they got more active in trying to figure out a way to eliminate JFK, which they ultimately did. And Donald Trump, being well aware of this and understanding what Kennedy did wrong to bring that, to bring about that end, Donald Trump's going about it a different way. And part of it is strategic deception. Part of it is pretending to be a friend of the killers so they don't come for your head just yet. But while pretending to be a friend of the killers, you're undermining their entire system from front to back, top to bottom. This is why Trump went so hard against the human trafficking and against the drug trafficking, because Israel has their hands in both pots. And if you empty the pots, there's nothing for Israel to stick their hands in and benefit from. And if Israel loses the benefits that they were getting from being involved in those industries, then they are now rendered weaker as a result. And not only are they being weakened externally, but they're also being weakened internally, because there's a lot of tension between the current administration in Israel, the incoming administration in Israel, and the people of Israel who don't want any parts of this. So Israel is actually going down in flames. They're just not telling us because, well, guess who controls the mainstream media? They do. And if they control the mainstream media, do you think they want to broadcast to the world that their country is in turmoil? Absolutely not. They have to broadcast strength and stability. So that's what they make us believe. But that's not the case. Jason M. Schmidt said, I saw that comment. I've never seen that person in the chat. I've seen him in the chat before. And he's actually a pretty cool dude. He's just completely wrong about the whole Trump being compromised thing. And I don't understand. Like, you watch my show, bro. I'm sure you do. You see the proofs. You see the receipts. Why are you still holding on to this religious belief? Why? Like a prosperity pastor clutching the Bible. Why, sir? Why? Anyway, Washington, the Pentagon is increasingly concerned about Israel ramping up its spying on the U.S., recently raising the counterintelligence threat level from America's top ally in the Middle East to the highest level, according to two U.S. officials and one former U.S. official. The Pentagon's Defense Intelligence Agency in recent weeks issued the new counterintelligence threat assessment amid rising tensions between Israel and the U.S. over the way forward in the war with Iran, the official said. You see, rising tensions between Israel and the U.S. Now, why do you think there's rising tensions between Israel and the U.S.? I don't know. Could it be because Trump's not playing ball with Israel? Because again, if Trump was compromised, there would be no tension. Obama was compromised, there was no tension. Bush was compromised, there was no tension. Clinton was compromised, there was no tension. Now all of a sudden there's tension with this compromised president. Well, what's different? I don't know. Maybe he's not freaking compromised. Duh. It's that simple. They said the DIA posted an internal message viewed by one of the current officials that raised the level for Israel to critical. The designation stems from concerns within the Pentagon that Israel is making a particular effort to surveil top U.S. officials to get information on the Trump administration's internal deliberations and decision-making on the conflicts in the Middle East, the official said. You see, they want to find out what Trump's really doing in Iraq, in Iran, and across the Middle East, because excuse me, because what he's doing is not in their favor. If what he was doing was in their favor, there would be no need for them to react this way. The only reason why they're reacting this way is because they're being undermined. Their plans are being derailed. Trump is taking control and steering their whole agenda in a totally different direction. Their agenda was to go in, start a war with Iran, destroy all the other surrounding Muslim states so they can take the land. And Trump instead went in and started taking out their spies in Iran, which crippled their ability to control the narrative in Iran and control operations in Iran. So, of course, they're mad. Of course, they're going to ramp up their spying. Of course, they're going to become more aggressive. Because they're losing. They're losing control. They've lost control, in fact. The DIA assessment includes a 7-page document and features a chart according to one of the current U.S. officials. The document says the assessment of Israel is that its ability to conduct human espionage and technical collection is at a critical level, according to the official. It also identifies a series of specific incidents that heighten U.S. concerns, the official said. A spokesperson for the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. said in a statement that it is completely false that Israel spies on the U.S., it is completely false that Israel spies on the U.S. Israel does not gather intelligence on American entities, let alone U.S. government officials. Well, that's a load of crap, the spokesperson said. Israel intelligence collections efforts are aimed at its enemies, not its allies. Well, we're not your ally, Israel. We're your enemy. So if you're spying on us and you only spy on your enemies, well, that tells us all we need to know about where we stand. Any claims to the contrary are either misinformation or politically motivated. Well, isn't that always their go-to? Oh, it's misinformation. Oh, it's politically motivated. It's propaganda. That's always their go-to. But unfortunately for them, we all know, and we have always known, that they have a very deeply entrenched spy network within our government. And they're the ones that collect the dirt on certain politicians in command and control positions. And they use that dirt to blackmail these politicians routinely. So they can't pull the wool over our eyes. They could say it's not true all they want, but I mean, they've said a lot of things that aren't true. The Pentagon declined to comment. A White House official said in a statement, "This entire story is false and sourced to someone who doesn't have any knowledge of what's going on." The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which oversees all the U.S. intelligence agencies, including the DIA, did not respond to a request for comment. While it is commonplace for allies and adversaries across the globe to spy on each other, the current and former U.S. officials said Israel's recent efforts have gone well beyond what is typical and expected espionage. The officials did not know if a specific incident triggered the DIA's decision to raise the counterintelligence threat level. So they don't know if there's a specific. So what these Pentagon officials are saying is they're not sure what actually happened to trigger this counterintelligence threat level increase, this threat level rise, right? But I don't think it was one specific incident. I think this was all part of the play to begin with. And once their spy networks across Iran were pretty much wiped out, then they were going to start focusing on the spy networks here. Because again, if they were still active, let's say the war in Iran never happened, and all the players that were working for Israel under the Iranian flag were still in place, we probably would have had a domestic terrorist attack already, and their media would have blamed Iran for it, and that would have been their pretext to go to war. But now that they can't blame Iran for any terrorist attacks here in the United States, they got to find a better way to get rid of Trump and his people. So what do? You ramp up the spying so you can figure out how you can attack these people, what you find their soft spots. Because now you're no longer dealing with an ally, you're dealing with an adversary. So to the rest of the public and the unwashed masses, Israel is our greatest ally. That's what we're being told, but they're not, and Trump knows that. The heightened alert comes as President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have clashed over the war with Iran and Israel's military operations in Lebanon, including a tense phone call this past week. NBC News reported. Trump acknowledged afterward to reporters that he called Netanyahu crazy during the call as questions mount about whether the two countries' objectives in the Middle East are beginning to significantly diverge. Well, yes, they are diverging. They're not on the same page because Trump is not going along with Israel's bullshit because Israel doesn't own Donald Trump. And this is I don't understand why it's so hard for people to understand this, for people to acknowledge this. Since a ceasefire deal was reached in early April, Trump has been pursuing a diplomatic deal with Iran to end the war Israel and the U.S. launched on February 28th. Israel has publicly expressed skepticism that Iran would abide by any negotiated deal. Netanyahu has pushed for a resumption of bombing raids against Iran and disagreed with Trump, who has pressed him to scale back attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Am I missing the page? Am I tripping? Oh. In early April, expressed disagreed scale back attacks in Lebanon, according to Western officials. Okay, there we go. Israel is keenly interested in whether Trump decides to resume major combat operations against Iran or to end the conflict, the current and former U.S. officials and outside experts said. The most practical outcome for the Pentagon is that U.S. officials will use some extra caution when traveling to Israel or visiting with Israeli officials, the current and former U.S. official said. They said there did not appear to be any impact on the high level intelligence sharing that occurs on a daily basis between the two countries, particularly associated with the Iran war. The U.S. already takes extra precautions when visiting Israel. One of the current U.S. officials said they're well known to aggressively collect. The U.S., like other countries, maintains elaborate counterintelligence or spy catcher efforts to prevent and track espionage by foreign adversaries as well as by allies and partners seeking to safeguard state secrets and monitor attempts to recruit or coerce U.S. officials. Under U.S. law, the FBI has the leading role in counterintelligence efforts, but they also involve a range of government agencies and the military. According to current and former diplomats and former national security officials, Israel for years has had a reputation for aggressive espionage, even against the U.S., its closest ally. It's a practice that has long raised concerns among national security and diplomatic officials, and U.S. intelligence officials closely monitor the issue, according to experts and the current and former U.S. officials. Top U.S. officials often take extra care when traveling to Israel, sometimes using burner phones and computers, and taking extreme caution when speaking in hotel rooms during official trips, the current and former U.S. officials and experts said. Israel has a hyper-aggressive intelligence service, said Emily Harding, vice president of the Defense and Security Department and director of the Intelligence, National Security and Technology Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a think tank in Washington. They are exceedingly interested in what we are up to, Harding said of the Israelis. In the 1980s, spying by Israel caused a rift with Washington, with U.S. Navy intelligence analyst Jonathan Pollard spending 30 years in prison after he was found to have sold suitcases of top secret documents to Israel. The U.S. also spies on its allies and seeks to gather intelligence on foreign partners, as evidenced in 2013 by leaks from intelligence contractor Edward Snowden. Those leaks showed that the U.S. was eavesdropping on European leaders, including then German Chancellor Angela Merkel's mobile phone, sparking outrage in Berlin. And you see what I mean when I say that their spy apparatus that they fearmonger us into being so worried and concerned about is really meant for their people? Prime example. The U.S. and Israel remain close allies, and the two countries' intelligence services have forged a close working relationship over decades. But concerns about possible Israeli espionage at such a sensitive moment, when the two governments are not in full agreement about the war with Iran, carry the risk of undermining trust between the two countries, two additional former U.S. officials said. Well, of course, there's already tension because Trump's not going along with what Israel wants them to do. In other words, Trump's not compromised. So here's a quick look into Israel and the Mexican drug cartels, because this is what we really want to get at, right? How Israeli firearms fall into the hands of Mexican drug cartels. Israel sold Mexico over 24,000 guns and rifles from 2006 to 2018. A new report conducted as part of a global investigation reveals, with little oversight, Israel has inadvertently helped fuel violence in the country. The links of Mexican drug cartels with Israel and Ukraine. So it gets better. They're linked to Ukraine too. And you know, Ukraine is big for the child trafficking. The United States is recruiting members of Mexican and Colombian drug cartels as mercenaries for Ukraine. Foreign Intelligence Service, American PMCs, have begun recruiting members of Mexican and Colombian drug cartels serving sentences in the United States to participate. The United States is recruiting members of drug cartels as mercenaries for Ukraine, the Foreign Intelligence Service said. And this is from April 9th, 2024. So this was 2 years ago this article was published. Evidence suggests that Mossad, Israel's national intelligence agency, has a policy or practice of funding or indirectly funding drug cartels. Who knew? I bet y'all didn't know. Excuse me. Evidence suggests that Mossad, Israel's national intelligence agency, has a policy or practice of funding or indirectly funding drug cartels. Allegations and claims have surfaced over the years, often tied to specific incidents or individuals, suggesting possible involvement in activities that indirectly supported cartels, particularly in Latin America during the 1980s. Below, I'll outline the key points based on available information, critically examining the narrative while acknowledging the limitations of the evidence. So, key allegations and sources. Israeli involvement with Colombian cartels, the Medellin cartel to be specific, training and arms supply. Reports from the late 1980s, notably a 1989 Los Angeles Times article, documented that Israeli instructors, including former Army Colonel Yair Klein, trained paramilitary units linked to the Medellin cartel in Colombia. A videotape showed Klein running military and assassination training for about 50 men, including Alfredo Vaquero, alias Vladimir, a leader of the cartel's death squads. These squads were blamed for killing judges and court workers. Colombian authorities also identified key cartel figures, including Pablo Escobar and Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, as involved in the training program. Arms shipments. A 1990 Washington Post article reported that a weapons cache, including Israeli-made Uzi submachine guns and other surplus military equipment, was found on a ranch owned by Rodriguez Gacha after his death. Colombian officials alleged that Israeli mercenaries, including Klein, facilitated these shipments. A high-ranking Colombian official claimed the Israeli government knew and consented to the arms sales, though Israel's defense ministry denied knowledge of how the weapons reached private hands. You know what this sounds like to me? This sounds a lot like this reminds me of Fast and Furious, when the Obama administration was running guns to the Mexican drug cartels. What was it, back in 2012, 2013 or some shit like that? Klein's defense through his company Spearhead Limited claimed his actions were legal and approved by the Israeli government. He was convicted in absentia by a Colombian court for training paramilitaries and faced an Interpol warrant, but was never extradited from Israel. Some Israeli media, like journalist Nahum Bernia, defended Klein, arguing that similar activities occurred during Israel's involvement in Lebanon, where allies like the Phalangists were tied to the drug trade. Mossad connection? While Klein was a former Israeli military officer, there's no direct evidence linking his activities to Mossad. Well, that's kind of how those spy agencies operate. When they're ready to get rid of you, they just scrub your file and act like they never knew you. However, books like Dangerous Liaison by Andrew and Leslie Cockburn, that sounds painful, and articles from Middle East Monitor suggest that Israel's intelligence community, including Mossad, may have had knowledge or tactically approved such operations as part of broader geopolitical strategies, such as acting as a U.S. proxy in Latin America during the Cold War. These sources argue that the Israeli government's oversight of arms exports implies some level of state awareness. Right. The Israeli government can pretend they don't know about this shit, but they do. Just like the Obama administration pretended they didn't know about the CIA running guns to the drug cartels in Mexico. And well, we all knew they knew. Thai heroin trade. In his 1990 book, By Way of Deception, former Mossad officer Viktor Otrovsky claimed that Mossad used the Thai heroin trade in the late 1970s to raise funds for covert operations on U.S. soil, which he suggested were likely illegal under U.S. law. Ostrovsky wrote that Mossad contacted opium growers in Thailand, offering to help them export opium while supporting coffee production as a cover to finance operations like undermining Arab diplomacy at the United Nations. 3. Mexican cartels and Israeli spyware. A 2020 TRT World report noted that Mexican drug cartels, including the Sinaloa cartel, gained access to Israeli-made spyware, often through corrupt officials reselling government-purchased equipment. While the spyware was initially sold to the Mexican government, its leakage to cartels raised concerns about oversight. Well, yeah, of course there was oversight. It was deliberate oversight because somebody got paid. A 2019 Times of Israel article linked the assassination of two Israelis in Mexico City to disputes over money laundering and drug cartel activities, possibly involving the Jalisco cartel. This suggests criminal connections to Mossad's direct involvement. And we know they're involved. We just don't know how and to what degree, right? And that's what tonight's stream is about. How are they involved with the cartels and to what degree? Well, we know arming them for one. And the other thing, because if you look up the illicit drug market in Israel, Israel actually has a very robust drug market. I mean, with that many sexual perverts living in the country, it's inevitable that you will have an epidemic of hardcore drug use. That means drugs beyond marijuana. And so part of, I believe, Israel's involvement with the drug cartels would be the dealers, the importers in Israel working directly with the cartels to patronize their businesses, to purchase their drugs. But let's look at this article here from Middle East Monitor. And it's an old article. It's from July 11th, 2018. And it says how Israel armed the drug cartels. It says drugs cartels, but I believe this article was written by a non-English speaker. So just by the title alone, there might be some typos in the body of the article. So just bear with me. I'll try to offer correction as we come across them. So let's go ahead. When I lived in the West Bank a decade ago, I heard from Palestinians in both Hebron and Jerusalem more than once that the Israeli occupation forces tolerate, even encourage, the sale of hard drugs among the Palestinian population. Oh man, shout out to Shane with the Venmo. Shane says, Bravo Energy Pouch. Check them out. Will do, brother. Will do. I most certainly will. encouraged the sale of hard drugs among the Palestinian population that they could control. The theory was that it was an attempt to encourage a sense of chaos and disorder, empowering local gangsters in order to play divide and rule against the Palestinian population. Hey, wait a minute. Isn't that the same thing that the government did with the drugs here in the United States, especially crack, by introducing crack cocaine into the black communities to keep them doped up and dumbed down? Isn't that what they did? So that's a small hat play. Well, when you think about it, who runs the hip hop record labels that produce the music that promotes drug use? The small hats. So not only are they supplying the drugs, or not only do they have a hand in supplying the drugs, but they're also supplying the soundtrack to it as well. This is crazy. It is certainly a fact that Israel has long maintained a network of collaborators within the Palestinians of the West Bank. I'll read that to you again. It is certainly a fact that Israel has long maintained a network of collaborators within the Palestinians of the West Bank. Now, excuse me. If they have a network of collaborators in the West Bank, excuse me, wouldn't you think they have a network of collaborators within Iran, within Syria, within Libya, etc., within the United States? You see what I'm saying? These are often armed by Israel and are usually recruited from amongst the most corrupt and thuggish criminal elements. Yeah, because only piece of shit people would rat out their own people. So they find the pieces of shit and pay them to be rats. When I lived in the West Bank a decade ago, I heard from the Palestinians in both Hebron and Jerusalem more than once that the Israeli occupation forces tolerate, even encourage the sale of hard drugs. Wait, is that the same page? Oh, yeah, it is. It's a double. Here we go. Here we go. Take, for example, the strange case of Zohair Hamdan, which I reported back in 2012. A Palestinian resident of East Jerusalem, Hamdan was described by one Israeli reporter as a proud collaborator with Israel. The man and his sons were heavily armed and were suspected by the local Palestinian population of being Shin Bet agents, working for Israel's criminally violent domestic intelligence agency. Despite the faintly ridiculous efforts of one discredited journalist to portray him as some sort of peace activist, Hamdan was in fact a petty criminal, thug, and fraudster. As such, he was a perfect fit for Israel's secret police. After falling out with his handlers, he went to jail in 2011. According to a Jerusalem district court document, the charges against him included fraud, assault, threats, harassing a witness, attacking a policeman, and intentional destruction of property. Now, you see, if he was a petty criminal and a thug when they hired him, right? He was doing all these things when they found him. But they didn't charge him with the crimes. They put him on the payroll because he was helping them and he was playing ball. As soon as he stops playing ball, boom, they bring all these charges against you because they knew that's what you were doing in the first place. Aside from anecdotal accounts, though I haven't seen any hard evidence showing that Israel encourages the proliferation of drugs amongst the Palestinians. Well, we have hard evidence here in the United States that Israel encourages the proliferation of drugs amongst the black people because, again, they control the record labels that control the hip hop industry. And we see what they push and what they promote. So isn't it safe to assume that they do the same thing to the Palestinians? That's their playbook. However, there is ample evidence that Israel has aided, trained, and armed criminal drug cartels around the world. In large part, this was a component of Israel's role as a proxy of U.S. imperialism in Latin America during the 1980s. Israel continues in this proxy role today with its arming of the Azov Battalion in Ukraine. And the Azov Battalion, I did a whole stream about them. It's on Rumble. Azov Battalion are Nazis, actual Nazis. One of the country's most well-equipped neo-Nazi militias. There you go, neo-Nazi militia. As I revealed in my report for the electronic intifada last week, the stepping up of Israeli support for this violently anti-Semitic armed terror group is likely due in part to recent moves in the U.S. Congress to end the arms and training it gets from Washington. This Israeli proxy role allows the U.S. president and security establishment entities such as the CIA to skirt around limits imposed on them by elected lawmakers, as well as Israeli aid to Latin America drug cartels. There is evidence of Israeli involvement in the trade elsewhere. According to former Mossad officer Viktor Ostrovsky in his book By Way of Deception, the Mossad intelligence agency used the Thai heroin trade as a way to raise funds for top secret operations on U.S. soil, which were very hush-hush because it is likely that they were actually against U.S. law. The Mossad had made its first contact with the opium growers in Thailand in the late 70s. Ostrovsky wrote, The Americans were trying to force farmers to stop producing opium and grow coffee instead. The Mossad's idea was to get in there, help them grow coffee, but at the same time, help them to export opium as a means of raising money for Mossad operations. Kind of sounds like the Iran-Contra thing that happened in the 80s when they were allowing the Contras to trade America dope, cocaine for guns, for weapons and ammo. And that cocaine was being put out on American streets, and that's what Freeway Ricky Ross got plugged into and became the biggest crack dealer in U.S. history, making millions of dollars a day selling crack. And the money he was paying to his connect Emilio Blandone for the purchase of the kilos of cocaine, that money was being used in turn to purchase weapons from America to fund their war. So this is typical. This is the playbook. The example of one such top secret operation that Ostrovsky cites are the efforts in the U.S. to undermine the Arab diplomacy, which was then pushing for the Palestine Liberation Organization to achieve greater United Nations recognition. A contemporary UN report on Thailand backs up Ostrovsky's claims about Israeli involvement in the coffee growing cover program, at least. The approach of Israel's intelligence, and remember, the U.S. under Bush after 9/11 went into Afghanistan and got heavy in the heroin trade. So this has been done before. And of course, the Bush administration completely sold out to Israel. Like the way they say Trump is compromised by Israel. No, that was Bush. But anyway, the approach of, and Obama too, by the way. But anyway, the approach of Israel's intelligence agencies, as with many countries, spy agencies seem to be that the ends justify the means. The goals of the Israeli state are so self-evidently righteous, the thinking seemed to be that funding them with off-the-books drug money was par for the course. Israel's involvement in the South American drug trade is far better documented, Well, could this be why Trump went after Maduro? Huh, perhaps. However, if it's still not very widely known. I guess that's a typo. It's supposed to say it's, not if. Andrew and Leslie Cockburn's book, God, that sounds painful, Dangerous Liaison, contains a large amount of key reporting on the issue. And if Leslie is Andrew's wife, that is a brave woman to marry a man named Cockburn. I'm just saying. Because I grew up in the hood where we heard about the burning cocks, and there was nothing nice about it at all. But anyway, that's beside the point. I digress. In the 1980s and early 1990s, the so-called king of cocaine was Pablo Escobar, the leader of Colombia's notorious Medellin cartel. At the height of his career, Escobar's cartel was responsible for some 80% of the cocaine smuggled into the United States. One estimate put his net worth at $30 billion. Damn. You mean to tell me this guy made $30 billion off selling cocaine to Americans? Shit, we're in the wrong business. All of us. Maybe I'll make that my Money Monday show. Like tonight's episode of Money Monday, how to make $30 billion, sell cocaine. That's it. That's all, folks. Good night. That's going to be the show. Books, films, and TV shows have been made about Escobar, including the popular Netflix series Narcos. Which is perhaps less well known is that the cartel's military forces were trained and armed by Israel. Interesting. Whose Colonel Yair Klein trained and armed the militias founded and controlled by the Medellin cartel's military leader. And let's go on to part 2, how Israel armed the drug cartels, part 2. The Medellin cartel's military leader was Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, who set up self-defense squadrons to protect his ranchers from left-wing guerrillas like the FARC, which had been taxing their cocaine exports. Rodriguez Gacha and his affiliated far-right death squads were responsible for some of the country's worst campaigns of political terror, targeting judges, politicians, and civilians alike for assassination. According to the Colombian secret police, the Cockburns, oh my God, that name, wrote in their book, Dangerous Liaisons, Colonel Klein had not only taught Rodriguez Gacha's men how to make bombs, including one that exploded on board a commuter flight. He had also trained the killers of Luis Carlos Galan, a presidential candidate in 1989 who was often compared to John F. Kennedy and who almost certainly would have moved into the presidential palace. General Maza of the secret police also accused Klein of importing quantities of Israeli arms for the Medellin cartel. And again, if Israel was supplying the cartels with weapons back in the 80s and 90s, don't you think they're still doing it now? These weapons were Israeli army surplus, including mortars, mines, and explosives, infrared equipment, machine guns, and medical supplies. The shipments also included 500 assault rifles and 200,000 rounds of ammunition. In 1989, after U.S. and Colombian authorities had finally turned decisively against Escobar and his associates under the rubric of the war on drugs, they eventually cracked down on the cartel. Rodriguez Gacha, along with his son and bodyguards, died in a last-stand shootout. Now, here's the crazy part. Bush and Obama each gave Israel more money and aid in terms of military equipment than Donald Trump did. Donald Trump actually reduced the amount of aid that Israel was getting, believe it or not. And I showed you guys those charts on a previous show. You can go look it up yourself. And with these presidents giving Israel all these weapons and arms and shit, if they end up with surplus arms that they're turning around and selling to drug cartels, that means essentially our government is responsible indirectly for arming the drug cartels. Because if we gave Israel the weapons that then gave who then gave those weapons to the drug cartels, well, we might as well have given those guns directly to the drug cartels. And perhaps that's what Eric Holder and Obama thought about when they decided to come up with Operation Fast and Furious and supply the cartels with American guns rather than allowing them to spend that money with Israel. All right, where are we? It was Colombian authorities, blah, 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 blah. Eventually cracked down. Rodriguez Gacha, along with his son and bodyguards, died in a last stand shootout. When they lined up the bodies, the authorities found a cache of 178 Israeli Galil assault rifles. Later on, when details of Colonel Klein and his training firm Spearhead came to light in the world's press, Israeli politicians attempted to distance themselves, painting the group as something of a rogue operator. But that was far from the truth. As the cock burns, somebody get the people some penicillin, please. As the Cockburns document, the Israeli government would have had to have known about the arms shipment that Klein and his firm facilitated to the right-wing death squads and drug cartels. One high-ranking Colombian official declared unequivocally that officials of the Israeli government knew and consented to the sale of the arms shipments to Colombia, up to the point of expediting a vessel to complete the first step of the route. So, as Israel tries to deny this connection to the drug cartels, there's documented evidence of them sending ships to transport the weapons and to the cartels and presumably the money back to Israel. An Israeli Defense Ministry spokesperson said later that the transaction via a front company to ship the weapons to Escobar's death squads was carried out under all the usual procedures at the Defense Department, even though state-owned Israel Military Industries shipped the guns in a sealed container marked machine parts in a clear attempt to cover their tracks. After Klein's exposure, when Israeli politicians began to denounce him in public, he was adamant that everything that he had done with the permission of the Israeli government. An Israeli investigation of Klein and his company revealed a 1986 document signed by the defense minister and later Nobel Peace Prize winner Yitzhak Rabin, giving Spearhead permission for the export of military know-how and defense equipment. So they try to deny their involvement, and Klein's got the documents. But you see how they try to throw Klein under the bus? So that was their man that they sent down there to do all of that shit. And all of a sudden, now that they're caught, they try to throw him under the bus. But that's what happens when you serve evil. That's what happens when you work for a bunch of dirty bastards. That's what they do to you. They use you up. And when you become a liability and you're no longer an asset, they throw you under the bus. The same Rabin, after Klein's exposure, attempted to distance Israel from Spearhead, claiming that its personnel were mercenaries as if they had been completely independent, which was not the case. They were instead part of an expendable front organization, both for the Israeli government and for its patrons, Where are we at? Both for the Israeli government and for its patrons in Washington, D.C. Speaking to the burning cocks, I mean the cockburns, Klein made it clear that Zvi Reuter, then the head of Sabat, the Israeli Defense Ministry's arms industry liaison department, was duly informed of every move they made. So Klein started snitching. Klein somewhat understandably became rather disillusioned with this realpolitik approach of his handlers. He summed it up frankly. It's so hypocritical. Spearhead was the only organization that served American interests because it was fighting the communist guerrillas, which were such a threat to the interest of the Americans. Now they turn around and say that cocaine is the biggest threat, so they turned against Spearhead. It just shows that we no longer serve American interests, and as a result, we were thrown to the side and persecuted. Israeli journalist Nahum Barnea defended Klein in Yedioth Aronoth on the basis that when he fought in Lebanon, Israel had done similar things there, since its right-wing phalangist allies were active participants in the Lebanese drug trade. The truth is that Yair Klein and myself have already gone to war in the service for the drug cartel once, he wrote. It happened 7 years ago in the Lebanon War. What is the moral defense? Decades later, Klein was arrested in Russia. After a Colombian court had convicted him in absentia of training the death squads. An Interpol warrant had been put out for his arrest. Russia had at first agreed to deport him to Colombia, but ended up making a deal with Israel to exchange him for a Russian prisoner. As far as is known, Yair Klein, now promoted to lieutenant colonel, still walks free in Israel. Well, can't blame him because he did do his job and he did do what they asked him to do. Armalef says Galil was my shit on COD Black Ops. The one with the Nazi zombies, Armalef, because that was my shit too. It was those headshots were amazing. And the rate of fire was like it wasn't slow, like it was slower than, the submachine guns, but it was just fast enough to kick out enough rounds to get the job done. So basically, Israel was not only arming, but training the drug cartels. So they were profiting from the proceeds of the drug sales. And not only that, a lot of the weapons that they were selling to the drug cartels they were acquiring them from the US. So while we're over here in America beating our heads against the concrete trying to figure out, well, how the hell did so many American guns end up in Mexico in the hands of cartels? They were telling us in the media, but of course, Israel controls our media too. They were telling us in the media that, it's straw purchases where the cartels would hire Americans to purchase guns legally for them in America and then pay them extra to ship or transport the guns to Mexico. But apparently it turns out it wasn't just civilians bringing in these guns. It was the U.S. government under previous administrations and the Israeli government. So it just seems like everything is connected to the cartels. It's almost like you go after the cartels and then you find the roads that lead to everything else, every other major player. You go after the Mexican cartels, you get intel on who the suppliers are and the supply line, and then you knock out the suppliers. Hence, Maduro's gone. You go after the cartels and you start, clamping down on weapon shipments across the border, and then you look and see who's bringing them the weapons. Oh, it's Israel. But if you cut off their supply lines and they can't make money like that no more because they ain't getting the dope like they used to, and then you tighten up security at the border so they're not getting the dope into the country as they used to, guess what now? With that loss of revenue and the current wars that are going on between the cartels, they no longer have money to buy their guns from Israel. So Israel just lost a big customer. Yeah, Jason Klein was a Mossad agent. He was. It mentioned that in the article. So now that we see the Pentagon raising the threat level of Israel spying Israeli spies in the U.S., now it makes even more sense because the U.S. government, by way of the Trump administration, is shutting down the cartels, which is cutting off one of Israel's biggest buyers of weapons. So what has to happen now? Well, the officials of the Trump administration who are in charge of overseeing these operations and making these major decisions, well, they have to be compromised in some way now so Israel can deter them from doing their job. And the only way they can compromise them is by ramping up the spying on them so people know what their vices are, and they would know what they're about, know what they're doing, and they would know how to then exploit their vulnerabilities, so to speak. Now, isn't that interesting stuff? So, what we've just discovered here is Mexico and Israel have had a secret alliance of arms dealing. But the thing is, we're now learning about this. We're now finding out the details about this and how this really works. Because up until this point, I'll be honest with you, up until this point, I thought that the drug cartels in South America and Central America and Mexico were completely independent from Israel. I thought they had nothing to do with Israel. I had no idea that they were buying guns from Israel and getting training from the Israeli Mossad. I didn't know that. But I'm not surprised considering the fact that the cartel sympathizer president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, well, she's one of them. I'm also not surprised that Nicolas Maduro claims to be a small hat too. Hey guys, you would not believe this. I just drank maybe 10 ounces of a 16-ounce Red Bull. And the more I drink it, is the more tired I get. I feel like my body is literally crashing. And that's how I felt yesterday, man. I just felt overwhelmingly tired. And I just had to get some sleep. See, I didn't know this, and I had to report on this because if I didn't know this, I'm sure there's plenty of you guys out there that didn't notice. There might be a few because I got some very highly intelligent folks and some sharp minds in my audience, but I'm sure the majority of you guys had no idea that Israel even had a hand in the drug cartels. But now we know. So if Israel is doing business with the drug cartels and making money off the drug cartels, how do you think Trump going after these drug cartels is affecting Israel? It's having a negative effect. It's having a negative effect. They're losing money. Their operation is being undermined. So Trump cut off their money, and now he's cutting off their intelligence. But Donald Trump is compromised. It's game over. Maybe it's game over for you, you goddamn loser. But it ain't game over for me. I've been playing this game for 10 straight years. And in 10 years, I've made numerous predictions, of which I was probably wrong maybe 1 or 2% of the time. And people look at me like I'm some kind of clown or some kind of idiot because I still support Trump. But I look at them like the clowns and the idiots for believing what they see on the surface. Because again, we're supposed to be the deep ones. We're supposed to be the deep divers. We're supposed to be the ones that look beyond the surface. We're supposed to be the ones that see what's happening on the surface and assume the opposite before we begin our research. So why are we looking at what's happening on the surface and just going along with it? Oh, that's right, because it fits our Trump bad narrative. So we'll just stay there where it's comfortable and we can continue feeding our narrative rather than going through the discomfort of doing actual research. Like, I couldn't believe that person that came in my chat, came in my comment section talking about Trump is compromised. Like, bro, where the fuck have you been? Are you still living in 2015? Where you been? But you see, had Trump done what JFK did and started running his mouth publicly, yeah, more people would be, I guess, willing to listen. But the plan would fail. The plan would fail because the plan would be exposed. Remember, Trump said it himself. He said, you never tell your enemy what you're going to do, you just do it. And in hearing that, I'm starting to see how that's being played with Israel. He's working against Israel, but he's not going to publicly say he's working against Israel. In fact, he's going to publicly say he's working with Israel. Because remember, these are the same people that pulled off 9/11. So if you don't think that they won't come over here and blow some shit up and kill a bunch of Americans because they're not getting their way, you better think again. And if Trump dares to publicly denounce Israel, they've already tried to kill him several times. And guess who's next in the crosshairs if they can't get to the president? His constituents. Because it's easy to kill 100 of us. You just go to the right event on the right day and set off some firecrackers, if you know what I mean. And boom, you got yourself a mass casualty event. And that's what Donald Trump is trying to prevent by playing it the way that he's playing it. But now that their Iranian spy network, shout out to my man Todd for the Venmo. Appreciate you, Todd. But now that the Iranian spy network is being wrapped up and being mopped up, they're going to have a hard time false flagging us here at home and blaming Iran because there's nobody in Iran that works for them that's going to claim responsibility and say, yeah, we did that shit, so what? Because that's what they're banking on. That's what they would be dependent on. So then they can use their operatives and their media here in America that they control to start selling the narrative of Iran attacked America. And then they can turn to their spies in Iran that are claiming responsibility and say, see, look, there's this group in Iran that said they did it. So it was Iran that did it. But if there's no Israeli operatives in Iran to take responsibility for that action, and the communications leading up to that incident are properly examined, what would be discovered is direct contact between Tel Aviv and the perpetrators here in the United States, which will definitively prove that Israel was behind it. It's like this, right? It's like, let me see. I'm trying to think of a good comparison. Maybe I'm too tired. Maybe I'm just having a brain fart. All right. Here's an example. You got the Bloods and the Crips, right? The Bloods wear red, the Crips wear blue, right? But as the Crips, you want to wipe out the Bloods because you got beef with the Bloods. But then on the other side, you got the Latin Kings that also got beef with the Crips, right? So the Crips got to fight a war on two fronts. So what do? They infiltrate the Crips. They could infiltrate the Bloods or infiltrate the Latin Kings. So let's say they infiltrate the Latin Kings. Now they got their members wearing yellow and wearing the yellow flags with the 5-point crown and all that bullshit. You know, amudare, all that bullshit, right? And you use your operatives. The Crips would use their operatives who are embedded amongst the Latin Kings to launch attacks against the Bloods. So now the Bloods suffer casualties. Then what happened? The Bloods retaliate against the Latin Kings rather than retaliating against the Crips. Now you got the Bloods and the Latin Kings at war with each other. They wipe each other out. The Crips come out on top. So by the Crips launching that attack against the Bloods but wearing yellow flags, the Bloods are now going to respond in retaliation against the wrong group, against the group that didn't attack them. They got false flagged. That's what Israel plans to do to America. Use their spies within Israel to coordinate terrorist attacks here at home. I mean, they're spies within Iran to coordinate terrorist attacks here in the United States so they can then turn around and say Iran did it and then get us into a war with Iran. Because we're not really at war with Iran. I showed you guys the articles with the AI footage and all that shit, so you should know by now. We're not at war with Iran. We're working with Iran. And we're working with Iran to rid Iran of the Israeli spies, whether they be Israeli citizens or Iranian citizens. It doesn't matter. You're out of here. You came to America to spy on us? No, you get the fuck out. But guys, I'm getting super tired. My eyelids are getting heavy, and it's like no matter how much Red Bull I drink, I can barely keep my eyes open. I hope I'm not, rambling. I haven't lost my train of thought yet, so that's a good thing. That means I still got a little bit of sharpness left in my brain. I'm not completely going into shutdown mode just yet, so that's good. But that Israel cartel connection is very, very interesting stuff that I did not know about before, but it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense now that we read over the literature and then we look back at Trump's moves and who he was going the most aggressive against, the human traffickers, the drug traffickers. And that undermines part of Israel program. And in undermining Israel's agenda, you slow their progress. You know what I'm saying? But before I go, I got a funny joke for y'all. Y'all want to hear it? Well, I don't think it's funny at all. I think it's quite disturbing, but you guys might find it entertaining. So I'll go ahead and tell you. So I was scrolling online the other day, and you know, I'm kind of a lame. I'm not good at hollering at girls and hollering at women and shit like that and getting numbers like that. Like I can do it. It's just maybe I just ain't been in the streets long enough because I spent most of my life in committed relationships. So now that I'm back in the streets, I'm trying my hand at this pickup line thing. And I was scrolling through Instagram and I came across this page where this guy like hollered at the chick, and it was real slick how he did it, right? So the pickup line goes like this. You see the girl, you walk up to her, you say, "Hey, I'm about to call the cops on you." And naturally, she'll be stunned. Like, this stranger is walking up to me threatening to call the police on me. So her natural reaction would be to ask, why? For what? So he said, "Hey, I'm going to call the cops on you." The girl says, "Why?" And he goes, "Because you stole my heart." And she fucking melted. I was like, "That's awesome. That is great. I'm going to use that." so, so my silly ass, I'm out one day. I can't remember where I was. I was getting lunch somewhere, and this fine chick walks in with like two of her friends, right? So I walk up to the fine one. I got my phone in my hand. I'm about to do it. I'm smelling fresh. I got my cologne on. I got my jewelry on. I'm looking clean. My kicks is clean. I just got my laces out the laundry, so my white sneaks is glowing. So I walk up to the fine one, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm about to call the cops on you." And she looked me in the face with this like confused, frightened look and just took off running out the fucking store, just ran the fuck away. And I'm sitting there and her friends are looking confused and I'm looking at her friends and I'm like, "What the fuck just happened?" And her homegirl goes, "That would have been a cute line, but she got a warrant." I was like, what? I should have known from the face tattoos. I should have fucking known from the face tattoos, man. So yeah, that didn't work. That didn't work at all. So now I got to go back to the drawing board and come up with some other shit. Yes, that really happened. That really fucking happened. I'm glad I didn't put my phone in her hand to punch her number in there because she probably would have took off with that shit. Like, yo. So now I gotta find a better pickup line. I told you I'm lame, man. I'm lame. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And one of my boys was like, "Man, there's all these hoes out here, man. You just buy the pussy, man. Just check off on the hoes." And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know the prices. Like, what if I holler at the chicken and I offer too much money? Now I'm overpaying for the shit. So now I look like a fool and I wasted my money, right? But what if I lowball her? Now I look like a bum, and then she's gonna like turn up her nose at me and shit. I can't do that. I don't play that game. I don't operate in that realm. I'm a pimp, not a trick. There's a difference. There's a difference. You know what I'm saying? So now I gotta go back to the drawing board and come up with some new shit. Yeah, like she ran like all I remember seeing was like this. She just looked like a scared squirrel. And like 2 seconds, like she must have like blinked once and her eyes closed, and before they opened, just ass and elbows out the door. Like they had the little bell on the door and everything. It was like ding ling 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 ling. She just gone. I almost thought I saw her freaking shoes on the ground smoking when I came outside. I was like, what the hell? And then her friends tried to push up on me, but they were ugly. And I should have known there was something wrong because whenever you see a pretty chick hanging out with ugly chicks, there's something wrong with that pretty chick. She either got low self-esteem or active warrants, one or the other. Stay away. Or if you see like a slim chick hanging out with a bunch of fat chicks, that slim chick got low self-esteem, so she need the fat chicks around to make herself feel beautiful. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and it's the same thing with dudes. It's like the dude that got he ain't balling, but he got a little bit of money and he want to feel like he's balling, so he hangs out with broke friends, with broke homies. So he'll be the one with the money. He'll be the one buying the drinks. He'll look like the star. He'll look like the boss, and he'll get all the girls because he surrounds himself with inferior men. You know what I'm saying? Like that type of shit. Like I can't roll like that. I need all my homies. If I'm juried up and I'm driving, I need all my homies rocking they ice and driving too. You know what I'm saying? If I'm buying rounds of drinks, I need my homies to be able to buy rounds of drinks too. You know what I mean? Because ain't nothing worse than you chilling at the bar and you meet a chick, but you just spent your last dollar on this fucking Corona, and you have an opportunity to holla at her and get her number, but in order to keep the conversation going, you got to buy her a drink and you can't because you're broke. Now you got to call your man over like, yo, can you buy us 2 drinks? Like you're not getting that number. She gonna look at you stupid. She gonna be like, I might as well talk to him because he's the one buying the drinks. What am I talking to you for? Sherry Cat says that's not a fair statement. What's not a fair statement, Sherry Cat? That's just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with me. You know what I'm saying? you don't have to agree with me, but that's been my experience. That's been my experience because I've dated the pretty chick with a bunch of ugly friends, and I've come to realize that that pretty chick didn't really know how pretty she actually was. Had a lot of insecurities about herself and self-esteem issues. you know. But that was funny though. That was funny when the chick just took off running. I was like, what the fuck? Like I started smelling my armpits and shit. I'm like, do I stink? Did my breath? I'm checking my breath. I'm like, was it me? No, it's the police. It was the police. I still don't know what the warrants are for. Now I'm trying to figure out what the damn warrants are for. Maybe it's Grand Theft Auto or something. I don't know. I don't know. The face tattoos just scream Kia girl, but I don't know. Oh shit, what up, D Allen? Good to see you, bro. Good to see you. Will my breath melt an onion? Dude, if your breath melts plastic, you got a problem. You might have a fever. Breath so hot, your mouth got a fever. Yeah, that was wild. That was wild. Like, I'm not used to seeing grown women fully dressed just running at full speed. I'm not used to that. That caught me way off guard. Ugh. Have you ever like went to like a city that you never been to before and you decided to go hang out at a bar and you don't know anything about this town, you don't know anything about these bars, and then you go into a bar to go sit down and have a drink, and then you look around and you start to notice that there's no women in there, it's just a bunch of dudes, and they come to find out it's a gay bar. What's more embarrassing, like finding out that you're sitting in a gay bar or being seen walking out of it? Because it's like once you're in there, like now you got to show yourself walking out. Like what's more embarrassing? It's like a social death sentence at that point. Luckily, that's never happened to me, but I've had friends that it's happened to. But I'm a little skeptical about their stories because I'm like, you didn't notice, like the first thing, like I don't go into a bar. Like I don't, first of all, I don't hang out at bars like that. That's not something I do. But there are times when I find myself out and I might patronize a bar or two in a night. But the first thing I look for is, one, are there women in there? And two, are there pretty women in there? And three, are there pretty single women in there? You know what I'm saying? Like, you kind of scope out the crowd before you make yourself at home and start spending your money, right? So if you walk into a bar full of men and it's a gay bar and it took you 30 minutes to notice, it's either you're completely oblivious to your surroundings or you wanted to fucking be there. You know what I mean? But yeah, that was wild. So the next time, the next time I go out and I try one of those internet pickup lines, I'll let you guys know how it goes. Now I have had some success. I have had some success. There was there was this one chick I actually slid in her DMs. I hope she's not watching because then she's gonna know. so so lady, if you're watching, turn it off right now. But anyway, so I slid in her DMs and I tried one of those pickup lines and it fucking worked. It actually worked. So she popped up on my Facebook feed and she was real pretty in her picture. I didn't know she was overweight, but she was real pretty. Right? She fooled me. She got me with the filters and the headshot. And it wasn't until I took a double take at the picture that I realized I couldn't see her collarbones. And fellas, when you're looking at chicks, if you're gonna DM slide or something on social media and you want to know if she's a fat chick or not, or you're being catfished, you look for those collarbones. If you can't see the collarbones, there's they might be a little more than she might be a little more than you bargained for, right? But anyway, that's beside the point. So I slid in her DMs. I looked at her profile and I noticed she was from North Carolina. And I'm like, well, that's a pretty boring state. So I slid in her DMs and I said, I was always told there's nothing to see in North Carolina, but I realized that was a lie the moment I saw you. And like, she's been in my DMs for the last 4 days now, and I can't get rid of her. Like, that shit worked like a charm. And I was like, wow, this human psychology shit is really something. It's really something. Cause as pretty as she is, I know she gets a bunch of dudes sliding in her DMs and shit all day. What's up, beautiful? Good morning, gorgeous. That corny shit. Nah, man, you gotta hit them with some shit. You gotta hit them with some shit to throw them off a little bit. Like when I was in high school, this one used to get them a lot when I was in high school. When I walk up to a chick to go holla at her, I just act like I know her, like we've known each other forever. And I'll walk up to her and I'll look her in her face. I'm like, and then she'll look back at me and like kind of give me the what look, like what? Like, what you looking at? Like, I'm gonna tell you, man, you out here cheating. And then when I would say that, she would like kind of be taken aback and then find it funny and giggle and then reveal to me that she has no man. So instead of me walking up to her and saying, hey, beautiful, how you doing? I think you're pretty. You have a boyfriend? Like, nah, you get that information out of her, but you do it in a fun way and you make it interesting. They like that kind of shit. I don't know why. Because if a woman walked up to me and was like, I'm going to tell you, girl, you out here cheating, I'm like, bitch, you better not. You know what I'm saying? So, it's fun. It's fun. It's been, and I realized that it's been a while since I've been in the streets, man. Like, my game is dusty. Like, I gotta get my shit back. I gotta get, put some WD-40 on my game because I used to be smooth with it, but I I've been locked down so long, man. I've been locked down too long. But now that I'm older, though, like the thrill of it is gone. Like I remember it was like a rush. Like when I was younger, I had this thing where, like when I was in like my late teens, early 20s, right? Like every girl I met always thought that I had a bunch of women I was sleeping around with, but I really wasn't. I really, really wasn't. I just had a bunch of women I could sleep around with, but I wasn't because and guys, I don't know if any of y'all experienced this, or maybe I'm just that much of an egomaniac, But what I would do is I would like holler at girls and I would get their number. I would talk to them for a while and take them out on a few dates, go hang out with them. Maybe I'll smash, maybe I won't. But in a lot of cases, like just knowing that she would be willing to let me smash was enough for me. Like it gave me the endorphin release that I would get from actually hitting it, right? So I wouldn't even hit it. Just knowing that I could hit it was enough for me, you know? So I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's normal, if other guys go through that shit, because I don't talk to men like that, you know. But it was kind of something I did, and there was times when, like, in my past relationships, it came back to bite me in the ass because now I had all these women in my phone that you know wanted to, wanted me to hit it, but I never hit it. So they kept coming around and they just wouldn't go away. And then my girlfriend would be like, "Oh, you got all these bitches hitting you up in your phone," and then and it put a strain on my relationship. So then after a while, I started wondering, like, maybe if I would have hit it, they would have left me alone. But then maybe if I would have hit it, it would have been worse. You know, I don't know, but it was just a thing that I did, and I've never really, you know, heard of any other guys doing that shit. But I don't know, man. Maybe it's just the player in me, man. Maybe that's what it is. Right, Jason M. Schmidt just primed it for later and split. I guess that's part of building the roster, like now that you have options. It's kind of like giving myself like at least I know I still got it kind of thing. Like I don't have to hit it. I just need to know that I could and I'm good with that. You know what I mean? It's weird. It's weird. I sometimes I feel like a lame for that. I don't even think I should have told y'all that. But I'm back in the streets, man, and it's a new experience and it ain't what it used to be. I tell you that. People are so antisocial. They don't speak when you're out in public and shit. Everybody's got their faces buried in the phone and it's terrible, man. It's fucking terrible. You know? Chicks got warrants and shit like, you know, you can't even play about the police with them. she'll flee. The entire movie Moody says chicks behave better when you have options. They act on their best behavior. I've always, since I was in high school, I found this to be the weirdest thing. When I had a girlfriend, that's when all the other girls wanted me. And then when I was single, it's like I didn't exist, and it was late. It wasn't until like I was like well into my late 20s that I found out or I learned that if women see a man with another woman, especially a fine woman, to them, and ladies, tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. I don't know. But this is what I was told, and I was told this by a man. So I'm just quoting what I was told. I'm not stating this as fact. But I was told that if women see a man with a fine woman, they kind of look at that man as okay, he must have something going on. So he's worth getting at. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to a man that's single, you know, if he looks good and he's got money and he's got resources and he's, doing well for himself, but he's single, they kind of look at you like something's wrong with you. And I don't know. I don't understand that, but I kind of do though, because now at my big old age, I'm about to be 39 in a couple of weeks. When I see women that are single, that are my age and they're fine, the first thing I think is trouble. That's the first thing I think because I'm like, if she's that fine and she's that great, why hasn't anybody married her yet? You know what I'm saying? Like, why isn't she married yet? Because I see a lot of fine women my age and older that got their husbands and had their husbands for 15, 20, 30 years and shit. So when I see single women my age, it kind of makes me scratch my head like, I don't know. This is not a good sign. But it's a different world now, man. It's a different world. And I don't personally see anything wrong with, guys in their 30s dating women in their 20s, like that age gap dating thing. Like I don't see why people say, "Oh, that makes you a pervert," and this and that, because they're both still consenting adults, right? But personally, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can, because I'm touching 40. In a couple of weeks, I'm gonna be a year away from being fucking 40. I can't date a 23-year-old. You know what I'm saying? I can't bring myself to do it, because when I look at her and I see the youth in her, is like, my fucking daughter is 15, is gonna be 16 this year. You know what I'm saying? And I would hate for my daughter to be 23 dating some 40-year-old guy. So why the fuck would I do that to somebody else's daughter? You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I don't know. I can't really. Jason M. Smith said, "Uncle Citizen Man." Damn, bro. I can't really get with that. Now, if I'm 45 and she's 35, that's different. Because now we're both at a mature level in life. Because your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25 anyway. So if you're 40 and you're dating a 22-year-old, she's still a kid in her mind. You know what I'm saying? And I can't do that shit. I can't bring myself to do that. I guess it's because I have a daughter. So I see, drastically younger women in a different light. I don't see them as potential mates. I see them as my daughter's friends. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you know, that's just me, man. That's just me. And it's not a knock to the guys that do the age gap dating thing at all, because again, it's not illegal, it's not immoral, you know, structurally there's nothing wrong with it. And in fact, socially and psychologically, it probably works out better, in those relationships, because, you know, they say men age like wine and women age like milk. So as the man gets older and his resources and his ability to accumulate resources increases, that woman still got, 10, 20 years of youthful beauty left in her before that starts to fade. You know what I mean? So I can understand the logistics behind it. It's just mentally, I can't bring myself to do it. You know, I'd rather date a woman my age or close to it. I was studying the Chinese zodiac, and based on the Chinese zodiac, apparently the perfect mate for me would either be 4 years older than me or 4 years younger than me, but there has to be a 4 year age gap. And in all my past failed relationships, I've never had the 4 year age gap thing. So it's never worked out. So I'm starting to think maybe that's where I've been going wrong. I got to be more meticulous about the 4 year thing. But honestly, I'm really not even interested in dating nobody right now. I'm enjoying the single life. I'm enjoying having my own space and not having to tiptoe on eggshells or worry about what another motherfucker think, or arguing with a grown ass child over dumb shit when they're dead wrong. Like, ain't nothing worse. Ain't nothing worse than arguing with somebody and they dead fucking wrong. That shit is the dumbest. It is the dumbest thing ever. Like it makes you feel like I would feel like I got dumber after that conversation. Like, you ever had conversations like that where you talk to somebody and they're so narcissistic you can't correct nothing that they say, and they argue with everything you say, even though they dead wrong, they'll still sit there and act like they're right. And then after that conversation, you're just fucking exhausted and regretting even speaking to the motherfucker. Like, I've had so many times where I felt like that. It's such a relief. It's such a relief to not have to deal with that shit, you know? And if I was to be so, if I were to ever be so fortunate enough to find a good woman that I can get along with on that level and actually have sensible conversations, I'd probably reconsider. I'd probably reconsider getting married, but as of right now, I don't want that shit. I do not want to get married. I have not met one married man that's over 10 years old that's been married for at least 10 years that would recommend marriage to a single guy. I've yet to meet him. Now, if you ask him if you should get married while his wife's standing there, he'll give you a different answer. He'll be like, "Yeah, marriage is great." But as soon as his wife walks away, he's like, "Nah, don't do it. Don't you fucking do that shit." You know what I'm saying? And the fact that the courts rigged the system to where the men have to get financially exploited just to get out of the marriage, it basically means that you're financially being held hostage into staying into that. You're being financially coerced into staying in your marriage because now you got to pay a bunch of money just to get the fuck out of it. So it's not a good deal. Now, back in the day when the quality of women was better and they were more abundant, it was worth it because you wouldn't have to worry about divorce because it wasn't a thing. But thanks to the advent of social media and all the social programming and shit and the psyops that's been ran on people, you know, the quality of person all the way around has degraded. Thus, the quality of woman has degraded. And it's hard to find a woman that's worth marrying that you don't have to start thinking about divorce before you marry. Like, you don't have to, like, now it's hard to get into a relationship without an exit strategy now. Sherry Cat says that's so sad. Yeah, it is sad. It is sad. It is, man. And I hate it. And that's why it was so heartbreaking for me to have to walk away from my last relationship because I was like, I got somebody good, I'm safe, I'm cool. I'm actually going to be able to have a family this time and blah 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 and you know, she just turned into one of them social media monsters like the rest of them and I was just like I can't do it no more. I can't fucking do it no more, man. But I'll tell you one thing, I've been doing a hell of a lot better financially since I've been out of that shit. Like I'm making more money now because now I have time to focus on my business. I got time to grow my business and invest in shit. I have peace of mind so I can plan and strategize better. You know what I'm saying? And I've actually been able to save quite a substantial amount of money in the last like 2 months. You guys would be shocked if I gave you the number. You'd be mad at me if I gave you the number. So I ain't gonna give you the number. But it's in 2 months I've been able to literally save aside from the money that I've already had put away. I was able to add another like well over. Well, I give you a ballpark. It's greater than $5,000 and less than 10,000 in 2 months. In 60 days, that's how much money I've been able to save while still spending money on my kids, while still financing my entire life and paying my bills and everything and having money in the bank. I was able to add that much money to my savings in 60 days, which is wild. I've never been able to save that much money in such a short period of time. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of this summer where I could continue operating in this space. And, if I could put away 5,000 every 60 days, I'll have at least 20,000 by the end of the summer added to the bank. You know what I mean? And the interest that I'm going to accrue on that by next year, it's going to be wild. And then think 5 years down the road of constantly repeating that process where I'd be. Like, I'd be well on my way to retirement by 50 if I do it right. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's amazing. It's amazing what happens to your life when you have the wrong people around you and you remove those people from your life. the difference that it makes. It's amazing. It is incredible. And I've come to understand now, and this is kind of what's helped me through the whole process. Because I remember in the past going through breakups and being sick about it for months, and this time around, I was clicking my heels. You know what I'm saying? I was good because I went into it with the mindset of, you know what? I still have my goal. I still have my purpose. I still know who I am. I haven't lost myself. I just have to operate in a different space now, but I'm still the same me. I'm just in a better space that's more conducive for me. So I don't have to conform myself to anybody else's expectations. Thus, I can continue to perform at the level I've been performing at and probably even exceed that, which I've done. I've exceeded it, you know? And I looked at it like the way, like what Nipsey Hussle said, everybody can't come. I'm on my way to the top. I got places to go. I got things to do. And if I keep the wrong people around me who are going to contribute to the squandering of that wealth, I'll never be able to accumulate that wealth and acquire that wealth. So I have to, in order to enter this new chapter of my life and make it to the next tier on this mountain, I got to drop the dead weight. So I had to look at that last situation as the dead weight that I was getting rid of. And that's just my perspective. And maybe from her perspective, it's the same thing. Maybe she's like, you know, I'm at a crossroads in my life where I'm entering a chapter where he doesn't belong. He's not a character in my book in my story anymore. And that's cool. I wouldn't blame her if that's the way she thought about it, because that's the way I'm thinking about it. Because guess what? Life goes on. I still got to live my life. So I'm not gonna, shut down or destroy myself because I lost my woman. Like, fuck that. I haven't lost myself. That's the important part. I haven't lost myself. And yes, I went through the bouts of depression. I went through the whole, feeling down, feeling sad, missing you, feeling blue, and all that bullshit. But it did not last very long because once the season started and them checks started rolling, I was like, "Pfft, well, shit, is this what I've been missing out on this whole time? Is this what being single comes with? Great. I can get used to this." So here I am, and I'm chilling, and I'm good. The thing that bothers me the most, though, about the devolution of society in terms of how males and females interact with each other. The thing that bothers me the most is my daughter is going to have a generation of weak ass, effeminate males to choose from for a husband, and my sons are going to have a generation of hoes to choose for wives. And I hope to God that they don't make the mistakes that I made, because choosing the wrong women in my life has derailed my plans by decades, I'd say. At least, excuse me, I've at least lost about 10 to 15 years of progress, personal progress in my life, because I spent it in meaningless relationships that turned out to be a waste of time at the end. So that means all the time, energy, and resources that I invested into these failed relationships is basically money that I put into losing stocks. And when the relationship ended, the stock collapsed and my investment evaporated. You know what I'm saying? That's what it feels like. Because then I think back on all the times when I'd go out to eat and I'd take my girl with me, and the bill was double what it should have been if I was by myself. Or all the road trips I went on when I could have, went down to Florida by myself to go see my kids and shit, see my other kids and shit, and crash on my homie's couch, or, get a cheap motel room. But I brought I brought my girl and I brought her kids, and then I had to go get a suite at the Marriott because they don't want to stay in no Roach Motel. And when we go out to eat, it's 7 meals on the bill instead of one. You know what I'm saying? And I'm thinking about all that money that I fucked up, and I'm like, here I was trying to be the leader, trying to be the man of the house. I'm providing, I'm making enough money, and I'm spending it on these people, and now they're no longer a part of my life. What did that count towards? There's no return on that investment anymore. That investment is lost. That's a L. So I figured it'd be better for me to be by myself. I can live easier. I can breathe easier. You know, all that tension and anger. Like towards the end of our relationship, I'd come home from work and I'd do the whole sitting out in my truck thing for an hour or two before I even came in the house. And I didn't even realize that I was doing it, but it just felt so much better not being in that fucking house. You know what I'm saying? That I would sit there in my work clothes in my truck with the engine running, burning a quarter tank of gas with the AC on, smoke a L, whatever, and just sit there. Or I'd slide in the house and pour me a mixed drink with some bourbon or something, and go back out, sit in my truck, and just sit there. You know, since I've been in my new crib, I don't remember a single day coming home and sitting in my truck and feeling better. I come home, I run in the house, I jump in the shower, I get fresh, get fly, get in the kitchen, whip up some shit. You know what I'm saying? Then go to my work computer and start doing my scheduling and running my numbers and shit, budgeting my whole week out. You know what I mean? Like I'm being productive. I'm getting shit done. Days when it's time to do equipment maintenance or repairs, I have the energy and I have the time to do it because I don't have to cater to nobody else. And I realize like my goal in life, as anybody's goal, I think, is to be not filthy rich, but rich enough to look filthy rich. And not look filthy rich to other people, just look filthy rich to me. Like be in my house and look around and see that I have I have the ability to access the spaces that millionaires can access. I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something interesting. And I was saving this for the Money Magic or the Magic Money shows, but I'll hit you guys with it right now. Listen to this. There are high yield savings accounts that can net you anywhere from 4 to 6% interest annually, right? Or 4 to 7%, I'd say. And if somebody puts $1 million, excuse me, $1 million into a high yield savings account that yields 6% annually, right? Out of that $1 million, the interest every year would be $60,000. So just off having $1 million sitting in the bank, you're collecting $60,000 a year. That's $5,000 a month, right? That's most middle class people working full-time jobs. That's pretty much what they bring home, you know? And like your average bachelor's degree level job, 60 to 100,000, 45 to 100,000 a year. So 60 is like, right there in the lower middle region. But to make 60,000 a year just for having $1 million in a bank, that's 5,000 a month of passive income. Now, here's the amazing part, right? Here's the amazing part. If you ever heard the phrase, you don't have to have $1 million to be a millionaire, this is what they mean. So that millionaire is making $5,000 a month off the interest he's earning off his $1 million. If you can create systems that can generate income with little to no work, with little to no constant work, and your systems combined can net you $5,000 a month in passive income. So let's say You write a book and you're selling your book. Your book makes you $2,000 a month in sales. Let's say you create a clothing line and your clothing line is bringing you $2,000 a month in sales. That's $4,000 a month, right? And you only have to create the clothing line once. You only have to write the book once, right? And let's say, on the other hand, you have a merch store online where you just sell other bits of merchandise, and you go to work every day, and the only time you have to get involved in your book sales, your t-shirt, your clothing brand, and your merch sales is when you're checking your numbers, or monitoring your sales progress or whatnot, or answering questions from clients and so on. Minimal work, and you still have your full-time job. So you get up and you go to work every day like you normally would. You work your job, you get your money, you pay your bills, everything's cool. But on the side, you got these three streams of income that are passively bringing you $5,000 a month. Do you know that you are, in terms of cash flow, you are at the same level as the guy with the $1 million in the bank collecting $5,000 a month in interest? Did you know that? So you don't have to have $1 million in the bank. You just have to be able to generate $5,000 a month in passive income, and you can gain access to the same spaces and resources that the millionaire can gain access to. Because that millionaire, he's not going to touch that $1 million that's in the bank. So he'll go to work every day, pay his bills and shit, and collect an extra $5,000 a month off the interest. Same as you. Go to work every day, pay your bills and shit, and collect that $5,000 a month passive income. Isn't that amazing when you really think about it? Isn't that freaking amazing? Right, Antara. You've been listening to Warren Buffett, Antara. I see. Compound interest, the eighth wonder of the world. It sure is. And shit, man. I gotta do this Magic Money show, because I keep giving y'all little bits, but I want to put it all together in one show. But I'll give you another gem before I get out of here. I'll give you another gem. The compound interest equation, right? Let me see. Let me see if I can successfully pull it up. Let me see. Compound interest formula. There we go. Images. I'm going to show y'all some shit. I'm going to blow y'all minds with some shit. Okay, maybe this one. Wait. Why won't it get any bigger? Okay, let me see. I want to find a nice big one that y'all can see. Okay, you guys can see that pretty good, right? What is this bullshit? Okay, there we go. This equation right here, right? This is how the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So while all these people are being taught that rich people get rich off the backs of poor people, and what the fuck? And they make their songs and they lament and they excuse me, and they're taught to resent rich people, while the rich is getting richer, the poor is getting poorer, all that bullshit. That's because we're not taught how the rich get richer. We're miseducated in that aspect. They've lied to us and they've taught us and made us believe that the rich get richer off our backs primarily. And in most cases, or in some cases, yes, they do get rich off the labor of the poor. But the poor can get rich too. They just have to learn how the rich get richer, because how the rich get richer is how the poor can get unpoor. And it's this equation right here. Compound interest. And I'm going to do on the Money Magic stream, I'm going to do a couple of these equations and I'm going to show you how it actually works. So even if you're working a regular job, like, it's so sad to me, right? And both of my parents are in this situation. And I'm sure you guys know a lot of older folks that are close to retirement or just retired and don't have enough money to outlive themselves. Like, they will outlive their money. Like, they'll run out of their retirement money while they're still living and they're going to die broke. And there's absolutely no reason, with the existence of this system, there's absolutely no reason why any American should spend 40 years on a job and die broke. It should not happen. And the only reason why it happens is because they've been miseducated on what to do with their money. They're told, save your money, but they're not told how to save your money. Most people think saving your money means you get your check, you pay all your bills, you pay everything else, you buy yourself the little luxuries and comforts, and then what's left you save. That's not how you save money. Every time you save $1 for a future use or for future investment, you're paying yourself. That's the way you have to look at it. And the correct way to save money is you pay yourself first. So if you can live off of $1,000 a week, $1,000 a week, but you make $1,300 or $1,400 or $1,500, let's say you make $1,500 a week, but you can literally live off $1,000 a week comfortably. As soon as you get that $1,500 paycheck, $500 of that right into the savings immediately. And that kind of tunes your brain to operate throughout the rest of the pay period on $1,000 budget, rather than operating on a $1,500 budget. Because even if you burn through that whole $1,000 and you're broke by the next payday, you still got $500 put away. So you're not broke. That's number one, is the order in which you divvy up your money when you get your paycheck. If you wait to pay yourself last, this is why people work, get paid, they pay all their bills, and at the end of it, they got nothing left. So you're paying all these bills, making all this money, but you can't save shit because you're doing it wrong. You're doing it backwards. Pay yourself first. Even if it's 1%, 2%, 3% of your paycheck, as long as that comes out first, then you deal with the rest of what you got. And eventually, after a while of employing that strategy, what you're going to find is you're going to completely change the trajectory of your financial future. Instead of being at that paycheck to paycheck plateau or always falling short on the decline, you'll actually change your trajectory of your financial future into a steady incline, where not only will you have your bills paid at the end of the month, but you'll have money put away too. And it all starts with just changing the way you go about divvying up the money. Savings first, everything else second. That's number one in how to save. Step number two in how to accurately, adequately save your money. Do not stash your cash in a shoebox. Do not stash cash in your mattress. Do not stash cash in your sock drawer. You can, but don't make that your primary holdings for your savings. You stash your cash in a money market account, high yield savings account, index fund, ETF, something that pays you annual interest. And as you work, every check you collect for 40 years, and you put aside that tiny little that small portion of your paycheck into that interest bearing account, your principal that's generating that interest becomes larger and larger and larger over time. And what happens is your savings start to grow exponentially, because as that principal number starts to get bigger, the interest that you collect, that number starts to get even bigger. And as you collect interest, and that interest is usually paid out monthly in most accounts and added to your balance monthly, that added to your balance plus what you're feeding it from your paycheck, after 40 years, you work from age 25 to 65. By the time you're ready to retire, you'll have enough cash to not only pay off your house, but live comfortably for the rest of your life. It's that easy. But everybody is so busy chasing the lottery ticket. Everybody is so busy chasing the big salary. You don't need a big salary to do it. You just need to change the way you handle your money. That's it. It doesn't matter how much money you have. What matters is who gets paid first. And if you want to save and build something for your future, pay yourself first. That's how you do it. This equation right here, this is the secret to generational wealth. People see, when people think about generational wealth, they think about a large sum of money that even if we keep spending out of it, it'll last for generations. That's not generational wealth. Generational wealth is a system that can generate money long after you're dead. Because guess what? Let's say you get a Robinhood Gold account. It costs $5 a month, but it gives you 3.75% annual interest. That's what I save my money in. And I also have an index fund. It's a S&P index fund. It's called SNPG, that yields 22% interest every year. So between those two assets, I have a vehicle now that, as long as I keep feeding it every time I get paid with the money that I'm quote unquote saving, that savings plus that interest, of course, when I retire and when I'm dead and I'm not here anymore, I won't be here to physically add money to it every week when I get paid. But that interest on that lump sum that's still in there is going to continually add to that account indefinitely, forever, which means long after I'm dead, that account is still going to be making money. And I can pass that to my kids, and then they can work with that money. And once that amount grows to a large enough amount where you can live off of the interest, you just created a full-time paycheck, a full-time job's worth of paycheck for yourself every month, and you don't have to lift a finger. See, I always believed in investing in real estate and rental properties for my retirement plan, but even that had some flaws and drawbacks, because what if my renters destroy my property? What if the property has hidden problems that are going to cost more than what it's going to make me? What if I can't find good renters? What if the rent prices drastically decrease for some reason and my mortgage payment remains the same? Now I'm upside down. That's happened before. COVID had happened when they did the rent moratorium. They didn't do a mortgage moratorium. So the renters didn't have to pay rent, but the landlord still had to pay mortgage. So they were taking losses. But This equation right here solves all of that. If you got $500,000 that you can invest in an apartment building and generate income off of it, don't put it into one of these accounts that accrue interest. I see so many people, and what really got me interested in this is my parents have always been like a shining example to me of financial responsibility my whole life. And it wasn't until after they divorced and they were each on their own, and now they're both at retirement age, and I don't think either one of them is where, I mean, they're not going to die broke, let me not put that on them, but they're not where they would need to be to live comfortably in their retirement for the rest of their lives. So they have to work a few more years past retirement to really be able to sustain themselves. And in seeing that, it's heartbreaking because I see so many other people that are older than me that are going through that. And I'm like, how do I avoid that pitfall? How do I avoid the mistakes that they made when they were 39 and 40 that landed them in the situation they're in so close to retirement? How can I avoid that? So I started studying and I started researching, and I started really taking a closer look at this compound interest thing, and it really is something. It really is. Like, this shit really got me excited because I always knew, you know, I wanted to get rich at some point and get so rich that I got, money and businesses to leave to my kids. And now I have an opportunity to actually do that. And it's a blessing. And I want everybody to be able to share in this blessing. Let the dummies spend their money and stuff their cash in the shoebox. You see, the downside to putting away cash is this: inflation causes that cash to lose value. So the more you stash the cash without it earning interest, is the less you'll be able to buy with it when you finally retire and it's time to live off of it. But if you put it in an interest bearing account that can at least keep up with inflation, your money is going to still have it's going to have its value when it's time to use it. You know what I'm saying? And if you're in your latter years, like if you're in your 50s and 60s and you're close to retirement, give yourself 5 to 10 years of compounding interest before you take the money out. If you're my age, like 40, I still got a cool 30 years. I could run my company way past retirement age. I just have to structure it by then to where I don't physically have to go out and do anything. And that's actually my plan for the next 2 seasons. By the third season from this season, I'll be completely in the office, completely out of the truck. And once I do that, then I can bring in my daughter and teach her how to run it, teach her how to do the scheduling, how to do the budgeting, teach her about the industry so she can take over the company. Teach my sons about it so they can have a part to play in it, and teach all three of them about what to do with their money and how to generate passive income through interest. A lot of people, you ever seen that show, The Lottery Ruined My Life, where people win the lottery and then 2, 3 years later they're broke? I'm talking millions of dollars. Then 2, 3 years later they're broke. That should not, with the existence of this system, that should not happen ever in life. But it happens more often than not because people don't know this shit. They don't understand this, and they deliberately don't teach you this in school, because if they taught more people this in school, there'd be too many rich people and not enough poor people to fill the workforce. Another reason why, and people always say this to me, they're like, well, why don't they teach financial literacy in schools so kids can do better financially? You got to remember, Teachers barely make $30 or $40,000 a year. They themselves need to learn financial literacy. So you can't have a bunch of underperformers people who are financially underperforming teaching children how to overperform. It can't work. You can't have a bunch of plateaued, poor and working class people teaching the future generation how to get rich. It's just not going to work. So they literally cannot teach financial literacy in the schools because there's nobody qualified to teach it. Bottom line. And as much as I wish they would teach financial literacy in the schools, they can't. Because a lot of them themselves were miseducated about how money really works and how to really handle it. And if we allow them to teach our kids what they know about money, that's going to doom our kids to the limitations that their teachers limit themselves to. It's funny. It's been statistically proven that the kids who grow up and outperform their teachers and outperform their mentors and outshine their masters are usually the kids that are viewed in a negative light in those social settings. The kids that are viewed as the problem child, the ADHD kid, he don't listen, he can't sit still. Those kids. Because they dance to the beat of their own drum. They operate on a whole different frequency. And that's what's needed to transcend the constraints of mediocrity. Damn, I just probably gave y'all a whole hour of magic money. But we're going to talk about this shit. We're definitely going to get into this because I think this is the most important thing that everybody needs to know. And the beauty of it is it doesn't matter how old you are. Because let's say you're a retiree and you're in a situation where you're not going to die broke, but you're not going to be able to leave a treasure chest to your kids either, right? The best thing that you can do for your children before you leave this earth is teach them what I'm about to teach you and set up the system. So it may not be, in the parabolic stage where the interest that they're accumulating is enough to live off of immediately. But you teach them the importance and the value of the system because remember, they're young. So you teach them the importance and the value of the system that you created. Show them how to constantly feed that system so the money can self-replicate and generate more money through the compounding interest. And when you leave this earth, you may not leave them with $1 million. You may not even leave them with $150,000. But what you leave them with is a vehicle that will, by the time they're in their 30s and 40s and 50s, hell, by the time they're ready to retire, that vehicle would have catapulted them light years ahead of where you were when you retired. And they'll be able to leave that lump sum to their kids. They'll be able to leave that interest-bearing account to their kids so they can live off the interest and not ever touch the principal. So you still have an opportunity to create generational wealth, or at least the opportunity for generational wealth. And that's the beauty of this whole thing. Like when my dad left me his landscape company, he didn't leave me a lot of money. In fact, I got left with a tax bill. That's what I got. But the one thing that he did leave me with, aside from the accounts and the equipment, is he left me with the knowledge of how to expand the company, how to acquire more accounts, how to adapt to certain situations, how to handle the pressure of business ownership. And although, When he passed the business to me, he didn't pass it to me with brand new equipment and a swollen business account. It was quite the opposite, in fact. The knowledge that he imparted on me allowed me to get myself in a position where I now have brand new equipment. I got 3 crews worth of equipment. I got 100 times more the clients that my dad had, which means I'm handling a much bigger workload, but I'm able to handle the pressures of that and navigate those waters because of the knowledge my dad left me. So he didn't leave me a treasure chest of money, but he left me enough knowledge to create my own treasure chest of money. You see what I'm saying? So if you can't leave your kids the treasure chest of money, the second best thing you can do for them is leave them with the knowledge of how to create it. And you teach them that shit from the time they graduate high school. Don't send them to college. Don't waste your time sending them to college. Don't do that to your kids, because that's just going to wait. One, it's going to waste 4 years of their earning potential, and it's going to saddle them with useless debt that's only going to further delay their progress. You put them right into the workforce and you show them how to do this shit. And no matter what job they're working, whether they're a janitor, an aircraft mechanic, a brain surgeon, it doesn't matter what field of work they get into. If they don't apply this concept right here, their chances of dying broke are very high. And then the cycle of poverty continues. You see? So instead of us lamenting about the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, and teaching our kids that the rich are getting richer off the backs of the poor and all this bullshit, how about you just teach them how not to be fucking poor? How about that? Because yes, it sucks being poor. Many of us have been poor. I grew up poor. So I get it. But you know what my dad taught me? He taught me how not to be poor. That's what he taught me. And once I mastered that skill of not being poor, my financial trajectory has changed. Like, I'm literally online shopping for Cadillacs now. You know, I always felt I had a little pimp in me and I always wanted a Cadillac. Now I can go buy one cash money. I still haven't yet because I don't have a suit. I got to have a suit. But I'm getting there, you know? That's right, D. Allen. Knowledge is power. And this is what's kept people powerless for so long. There is absolutely no reason, and I'll leave you guys with this. And I got to do this Magic Money show. I got to do it. I got to do it because I learned so much that it changed. And here's the thing: what you're gonna learn in the Money Magic shows, it's not, tips and tricks that are gonna make you go from the poorhouse to the palace overnight, or turn your pumpkin into a fucking grand chariot or nothing like that. But what it will do is it's going to change your financial trajectory from that paycheck to paycheck plateau where everything's paid but you can't save shit, or you're always coming up short so you can't save shit, to everything's paid and you can save shit. Because once you get in that position, you'll never fall short again. You'll never, ever fall short again. Once you change that trajectory to an upward trajectory, you're on your way to what Warren Buffett calls escape velocity. And we'll talk about that too. But before I give you guys too much and leave nothing for the show, I got to go. I got to get the fuck up out of here. And ladies, I hope I didn't offend you guys too much with my personal opinions. Just know these are just my personal opinions. And the views and claims expressed by Citizen Man on this show may not necessarily be the views and claims of other brothers that are in the chat. And if you disagree with me on my opinion, that's perfectly fine. It's just my opinion. But when it comes to this money business, this is facts. When we're talking numbers, this is facts. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate y'all tuning in and sticking it out with me. Shout out to everybody that supported the show. Brother Lee 14224 with PayPal, my brother Todd with the Venmo, my brother Shane with the Venmo. Shout out to y'all for that support. I appreciate that. And I will see you guys on the next one. I'll try to do another one on Wednesday, but if not Wednesday, I'll probably tap in Friday. I do work outdoors, so we got some rain coming up in the forecast this week. So if I ever find myself getting rained out one of these days, I might fuck around and give y'all a day stream. Who knows? Who knows? Also, be on the lookout for this. Me and brother B Miles are planning on doing a collab show sometime soon, sometime here in the near future. So be on the lookout for that because it's been quite a while since we got down on one of those. So make sure you guys tune in for that. All right. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate the love. I appreciate the support. And I will see you later. Peace.